Hello teachers, this is your teacher, TeacherNica, and as for today, I'm going to share with you some of my tips regarding handling the adult students during the practice demo or during our final demo. Without further ado, let's begin. Tip number 1, make sure that your background is professional. In some ESL companies, they would ask you to provide a plain white background during our classes. The reason is that to make sure that our classes is professional enough for our adult students. The reason is that our adult students are preferred to have teachers who seemed professional in class. They want it to be plain white, no distractions, wherein they could focus purely during the discussion. Okay? That's why if we look at the companies such as Bizmate, Rare Job, and even Native Camp, most of their teachers are asked to have plain white background. Most of their students there are adults, but they also handle kids. But when we have a plain white background, it's much convenient for us because we just show rewards and trophies for kid students. But if it's an adult, it's way better and easier for us to have the environment where the student can feel much more comfortable. Next, second one is to smile and greet your student. It is still important for us to smile during the discussion or during our demo and even in actual classes. Always greet our students, but make sure that it is not in a kidify way or in a kidify approach. Make sure to ask them how they are, how was their day, do they have any plans, or why do they want to learn English? We ask that question, why do they want to learn English, for us to analyze our students' interest in learning the language. Because if it's for business purpose, our suggestion or the way we guide our students is in a way of business matters. The common topics or the common lessons would be business related. But if it's just to have conversation, have a casual conversation with other students or with other people, you can help your students with the very common vocabularies, not too complicated, because some of our adult students would prefer the simpler one. Okay, so that way we are able to analyze the type of our student. Next, the number 3 tip is that avoid kidifying your lesson. So once again, as I said earlier, let's avoid kidifying the lesson. Like for example, some teachers tend to forget using the hand gestures like can you see me, can you hear me. That hand gestures are common only for kids. But for adults, we can just simply say, can you see me, can you hear me, without showing any hand gestures. Okay, it's already fine because they are adult. They don't need the hand gestures anymore. And once we are teaching an adult students, let's avoid some gestures. Too much gestures in our hand because it's not necessary. The important purpose of our hands is to type. That's the only purpose of our hand when we are handling an adult student. Okay? Next, our approach to the students must be professional. Like in a way we appreciate their answer. We should appreciate our students saying, wow, that's a great sentence. That's a good idea. And you provide an excellent perception towards the question. Something like that. No need to say, good job, high five. That is only for kids. But if we're handling an adult, it is not necessary. Okay? And then provide continuous suggestion. Let's say our student made mistake when it comes to composing their sentence or their response to our question. Make sure to type it one by one or type each of the sentence or each of their statement and then provide a continuous suggestion. Let's say they made a mistake instead of using the proper noun or the correct noun in the sentence, they used the, let's say, the verb, or they ramble the verbs to its noun, and it is not an appropriate grammar rule, or it's not fit to the appropriate grammar rule that you are tasked to do, or the grammar text, or let's say the grammar structure that you are teaching the student is not fit to their response, you can actually correct your student in a polite way, giving them suggestion. Okay? And then type in the chat box each of your response. Once we are correcting an adult student, we cannot just correct them by saying our answer, or by saying the correction that they want or we want them to correct. Okay? Or the sentence that we want them to fix. We cannot do that. Once we are teaching an adult student, it is necessary for us to use the chat box and type the correct and the mistake of our student. Write there the wrong sentence and then your suggestion. Make sure that you use your chat box constantly, because our students, especially the adults, they constantly, or they are actually the type of students who always check their chat box or their previous lesson. They always check that. They always see to it that they have these new vocabularies typed by their teachers, just in case they forget to take notes during the class. That's why teachers, our role is to use the chat box, especially on our adult students. Next, remarks must be with tips, suggestions, guide to the student without offending them. So your remarks are at the end of the demo. Always remember to provide tips to the student. Like, for example, to better pronounce the L sound, try and practice la la la, something like that. Okay, you have shown the student how to practice the L sound. And you need to also type that one. Okay, the sound that they need to fix or they need to practice, so that the student can later on check that on the internet, or they can later check your class again on how to correctly pronounce the L sound or the R sound or the other sounds or the vocabulary itself. And then make sure that you have suggestions, like let's say you provide your students with a suggestion of practicing their pronunciation through let's say listening to a vocabulary word on Google and then repeating afterwards, searching for a difficult word and then repeating the pronunciation of that word, knowing the meaning of that word, and then using that word in sentence. So something like that. You can suggest that to the student, but make sure to type it down in the chat box so the student will know the step-by-step process in improving their vocabulary. So that's the suggestion. Or you can give them another suggestion, such as listening to podcasts, reading dictionary, reading books, having continuous conversation with a native speaker, or continuous classes in your class. Okay? And then guide the student without offending them. Let's avoid offending our students, especially adults. So when we provide suggestion, make sure that we say it in a polite way. Like, for example, that was an excellent sentence. Though, may I suggest you to use this way of the word that you recently used? Or you can say, well, that's an excellent sentence, but let's try to make it even more better. Okay? Let's try to make it even more attracting or proper. Okay? Let's try and improve your sentence. So let's try. Let me give you a suggestion. Let me help you with this one. Okay. In that way, we are politely asking, or we are politely giving our correction to the student without offending them. Because sometimes if we offend our student, it would, or the student would tend to, let's say, give us a negative feedback. And then after the lesson, they will not book your class once again. So giving a positive remark or positive tips to your student constantly without offending them is a good way. Okay? And then during your demo, let's remind our student that, let's say, after the end of the lesson, you already corrected the student with the pronunciation of, let's say, product. The student mispronounced the word product. So earlier in the lesson, you type that one. At the end of the lesson, for the last 5 minutes, because that's usually the time, last 5 minutes or last 3 minutes of the class, make sure to provide the same word that you corrected your student previously so that they can refresh their minds of what the word they need to practice. Okay? And then type it once again in the chat box. So, when it comes to handling students, actually, as for my personal experience, handling kids are a bit complicated and it's difficult, challenging. You need to be much more energetic. But if we are handling adults, it make our handling adults for me is a bit easy. Is a bit easy in a way that I could handle the class as if I am talking to a friend. Yeah. So if you are a teacher who wants to conduct a demo with an adult student, make sure that you build a friendly environment with your student without offending them. So as if you're talking with your friend, but remember to be professional still. Okay? Continue smile because our students will love a teacher who could guide them and also be friendly. Okay? So, thank you very much, teachers. If you have any questions that you would like to ask, please type in the chat box and I will try and give you some of my tips and help you throughout the way. Thank you very much, teachers, and see you once again in our next vlog. Have a good day.